On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina. All right, everybody, I'm here with Austin Womack of the Kansas City Royals organization. Austin, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, well, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for asking for me to be on the show. I've been following the show for a little while and seeing the different people you've had on who have been really, really good. So the fact that I'm in that same conversation is an honor. But yeah, like you said, I'm with the Kansas City Royals organization. This will be my second year with the Royals and in professional baseball with an actual organization. This past year, I was with the Burlington Royals, which is our Appalachian League affiliate. So first year in pro ball, like many other guys, got to experience extended spring training, got to experience rookie ball, and I'll be doing that again this year, which I'm excited for. So, yeah, it's been fun. I'm really looking forward to getting back to Arizona and just getting back to just being around the pro ball environment with all the guys and all the coaches.
So this isn't in the notes that I sent you ahead of time, but how much do you love Burlington?
Man, what a good question. Well, honestly, Burlington was pretty good. Compared to the other towns in the Appy League, I would say Burlington is right up there with Johnson City as like the two best. So I felt fortunate enough to where like half of the games we were in, like I was at least in Burlington. We had like a good amount of restaurants to choose from, all sorts of like stores if I ever needed to run and get something. And some of the towns, I don't know if I could say the same thing that we went and visited. The fans were great, definitely passionate, and small crowds. So like they're right on top of you, and you hear everything they say, which wasn't always a good thing, but it was fun. It was a fun environment, just being like the small town baseball feel. They really do enjoy their baseball there. That was pretty evident from day one. So it was a good experience there in Burlington.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I started in Bristol, and so I know the Appy League, and it was my first year in baseball, so I was the same way. I was green, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And it's funny you mentioned the fans. Like, we went to Burlington, and I had to get something out of the clubhouse right when the game started. And it was Kids Day, and the guys are like, dude, when SpongeBob SquarePants comes on, it's going to blow your mind. This was my first kids game. I didn't know anything about it. And so I go in the clubhouse, and the clubhouse starts shaking, like earthquake shake. And
Yeah,
I was
because
like,
right under the
what?
sand.
I was like, what is going on? And I walk out, and the stands are shaking, right? Because the clubhouses are right under the stands, and all I hear is the SpongeBob SquarePants song. And these kids are screaming. I went running down the hallway back into the dugout because I wanted to see it. Oh, man, the kids were insane. And the guys had all warned me about it. And I was like, no, it's not going to be anything. It was the first time that I was like, what is going on right now? Like, this is crazy stuff. But, yeah, Burlington was one of the better places we went to. So I'm definitely envious of you being there at least half the season versus being in Bristol. There's not too much in Bristol compared to Burlington.
So. Miss the Kids Day because that was, unless you experience Kids Day in Burlington, I feel like you can't really appreciate it. But yeah, the SpongeBob song, and then we got kind of lucky because it was like insanely hot that day, and like, by the third, fourth inning, the kids were drained because it was just so hot, and like the counselors and teachers were like, all right, this is ridiculous. Like, let's get out of here. So like half the kids left like halfway through the game. So we didn't have the full like craziness for 9 innings that I've heard we had in the past.
Yeah, so that's where ours was. It was about 7th inning when the kids started leaving. They were crashing and they were gone. And then after that, it was fine. It was just baseball. But I'll never forget that SpongeBob SquarePants song, man. As long as I live, just hearing all the kids screaming and the clubhouse shaking, it was a unique experience for my first year in pro ball. Kind of opened my eyes to things.
Definitely.
But all right, man, let's get into it. So, the kind of nuts and bolts of this episode is you work down at a place called Godspeed in Birmingham, Alabama. And I follow you on Twitter. You got a ton of great stuff on there, videos, and even just your regular tweets are very relatable to me. So maybe start with what Godspeed is, how you got involved there, and then what your role is. And then we'll kind of get into the finer details of what you're actually doing down there.
Definitely. Well, I'll start with just explaining what Godspeed is. It's a private training facility in Birmingham, Alabama. I got hired by Godspeed a little over 2 years ago now to be a full-time performance coach there. But they do a little bit of everything. So they do like all the training with youth athletes, a lot of high school, college kids in the summers. They have we have a growing population of like NFL guys. I think we had like 12 to 15 NFL guys this past off season. We have about 15 or 16 minor leaguers this year, and then a few big leaguers that are training with us as well. And we also do like adults. We're technically a CrossFit affiliate, although we're probably the least CrossFit gym in the country. We have guys that compete in Olympic weightlifting. We have your typical like boot camp stuff for the moms. We do remote training for like high school programs. We have like 7 or 8 high school baseball teams that use us for their entire off-season training. And we do all their like evaluations and testing and programming, all that kind of stuff. So we do a lot. And my role has kind of changed now because now I work with Kansas City, so I'm only here during the off season. So I'm not as I don't really work a whole lot with the minor leaguers anymore because they have someone else that does that. I just kind of help out wherever I can. I do a lot more of the back end stuff now. So all of our testing, we have Fusion Sport technology that we use. We get all sorts of like body composition, skeletal muscle mass, different stuff like that. So my job is kind of to get that from every athlete and like keep up with that and make sure we're tracking all that kind of data. And then just help out from like an organizational standpoint, wherever I can. So that's kind of like what my role is now. It's a little remediated just because I am working with Kansas City, and that's like what I would consider my full-time job now. But it is a really good atmosphere just because we do have so many different types of people in one place, all just working really, really hard. It's a great culture. Everyone's doing their own thing. Our weight rooms we have 2 weight rooms essentially, our athlete side and our adult side. And they're totally separate parts of the company, but at the same time, they're also not. And that's been really, really good just to see like how we've been able to do all of that under one building, under one company, and do it efficiently with every population you could probably think of.
Cool, man. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are killing it down there then.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So I saw, actually, speaking of the least CrossFit gym, I saw one of your tweets the other day about getting bashed for CrossFit and more strength coaches should do it. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm actually right there with you. I think there's a lot of value in teaching people to use the barbell and working hard and pushing the intensity in your workout. So elaborate on that one a little bit for me.
Yeah, that was a good tweet. Not a whole lot of likes or retweets on that one. Not the most popular opinion. But I think people they take things and they overblow it. They say CrossFit's bad because there are bad CrossFit coaches out there, which is true. There are bad CrossFit coaches out there, but there are also bad strength coaches out there. I think there are definitely things a strength coach can look at CrossFit, take from, and at least like maybe not necessarily apply 100% to their program that they have, but at least like, you know, challenge the status quo and the conventional way of doing things. And, you know, I mean, if you do a couple CrossFit workouts, you'll realize real quick that like they suck. They're challenging, and they're going to challenge your body in a way that probably you've never done before. Like you've never had to move a decent amount of load under that kind of fatigue, and it challenges your efficiency. Like that's the first thing I noticed real quick was like, yeah, I can do this movement or this movement or this movement, but as soon as a little fatigue sets in, like efficiency just goes out the window. And that's one thing, like the good CrossFitters, which I mean, really all they are is good at working out, like call it what it is, but they're efficient. They're the most efficient at working out. And there are some things that strength coaches can take from it. I think CrossFit has shown that you can get stronger, you can increase your maximal strength, you can increase your power, and you can increase your cardiovascular health all at the same time. Like you can like get strong, like add muscle and lean out at the same time. Like CrossFit proves that with everyone that competes in CrossFit, basically. And then like just conventional things in strength and conditioning where it's like, you know, an example I always like to use is, you know, you don't want to do a whole lot of like grip intensive things at the beginning of a workout because it might affect like the strength portion of your workout, which I agree, depending on your goal, you might want to avoid that. But CrossFit's like, no, screw that. We're going to do everything grip intensive because if that's your weakness, then like you're screwed. And so like we're going to do it. And if you do it enough, like you'll get better at it. So it's kind of unconventional, which I just always appreciate. Even if I'm not going to use some of the things, and like I would probably say I won't use most of what CrossFit does, but there are some things I can take from it, and I'm going to at least try, and I'm going to at least think about why are they doing what they're doing? Why do I like it? Why do I not like it? And then use that information to compare it to what I'm already doing.
Some really good points there. First, I haven't heard the efficiency argument, so to speak, and it's so true. Like the best are really just more efficient at the stuff when they're tired, which relates to sports definitely. Secondly, again, like you said, it doesn't matter if you're doing CrossFit, powerlifting, whatever. There are good coaches, there are bad coaches that make the difference in how the program comes across. And I agree completely with that. And so that kind of leads me into my next question is you have a lot of speed coaching on your Twitter. And so what kind of stuff are you doing down there speed-wise? Maybe some cueing that you're doing or some drills that you're doing that you're getting the most results with in terms of your speed training?
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I'm really excited to talk about just because that's probably the area of my coaching expertise, whatever you want to call it, that I've grown in the most in the last few years. And a lot of it's just because I've been around the program at Godspeed, and I think Lance, our founder, just does an excellent job of creating a comprehensive programming, blending the weight room and the strength training with the movement on the field. And like now that I've kind of seen how this whole program goes, like I've been able to see it happen and work like right in front of me. So I think oftentimes strength coaches just get stuck in the weight room and they never get out onto the field or to the court, you know, whatever sport they're working with. And they never get a chance to really blend everything together. And so like, yes, like there's plenty of research out there that shows by getting stronger, like you can get faster. But that's pretty easy. Like you take anybody who is still maturing physically, get them stronger. Like, of course they're going to get faster, but eventually that's going to run out. And like, there needs to be that transition and that transfer over onto the field movements, because that's like what they're doing on the field. Like until they can start bringing dumbbells and barbells out onto the field, like we have to be able to prioritize and work together on everything. And so the biggest thing I've learned is just that speed training needs to be looked at the exact same way that strength training does. Like, I think strength coaches love to do research on periodization, and like we're so good at like looking at our foundation movements, our squats, our deadlifts, our presses, our pulls, and then programming around those. You know, if we're doing a squat, we're really good at programming in maybe some hip flexion mobility drills, maybe some ankle dorsiflexion stuff, some thoracic extension, and then we might do some contrast. You know, if we're doing a knee dominant exercise, we're going to do some knee dominant plyos to increase that post-action potentiation, and we're going to increase our strength, our power, and like we're really good at programming around that focus of that main lift. But then when it comes to speed training, we just throw in, you know, a couple 10-yard sprints and a couple band resisted skips and a couple of this and a couple of that, and we don't really ever progress it. And it just seems like it's haphazardly just thrown into a program because we see it on Instagram or Twitter and we're like, oh, that looks good. But at the same time, like a good speed training program is going to take that foundational movement, just like a squat or deadlift, but like let's say acceleration, and then we're going to program around that. So what are the key points of acceleration? Trunk stiffness, extension, length, like all those things. And there are drills and exercises and cues and different things we can do to organize around acceleration. A good example I always like to do, like this is part of like what we would do like a phase one. So like a new athlete, a young athlete, an untrained athlete, on a linear day. I should back up a little bit. All of our sessions at Godspeed have a focus. It'll either be a linear day, it'll be a lateral day, or it'll be a multi-directional day. And then depending on the athlete, like we'll throw in some top end speed stuff, maybe some more focused like deceleration stuff, even though a lot of that's just within change of direction. But like on a linear day, we're focusing on just linear, you know, acceleration, whatever it may be. We'll do our dynamic warm-up, our ground mobility, all that stuff, and everything's going to be in that kind of linear plane. We're primarily flexion extension on this day because this is the focus. And then after we do that, we'll do like 3 groups. And the first group is always going to be like a pillar movement and a technique movement. So like we'll always start with planks and wall drills. And you know, if you go on YouTube and search wall drills, like you can find videos of very reputable strength coaches saying wall drills are garbage, and they make great points. But I think we need to stop looking at like good or bad exercises and start just looking at how we can fit them into like a comprehensive program. So like, for example, when we're coaching wall drills, we do it right after we do planks, because when we do planks, we can really hammer in trunk stiffness, resisting extension, getting your hips, lumbar extension, but getting your hips into extension and then bracing, stiffening up, and then like breathing through that. Okay, that's easy. And then we go over to the wall, and then we're working on, you know, knee drive, knee up, toe up, backside extension, good stiff torso. But now we're keeping that same trunk stiffness, and we're still cueing that exact same thing, but now we're also adding in some contralateral hip flexion extension. And so it's going to challenge the pelvis a little bit to stay stable. And those are just like simple drills, but the way we coach them and program them, like we blend them together. And then, you know, we do some more drills, maybe work on some specific stuff, like some bounding, to work again on just a feeling of like pushing the ground away from them and like getting length and drive and like not shortening their extension, but like getting that full triple extension. And then we go on to the actual foundation, the skill, like the acceleration. So it's like we're basically just giving them pieces to the puzzle, but we're explaining at the same time like what we want the final puzzle to look like. And I think it's the same thing when you're teaching like a squat or a deadlift. Like, you're going to teach them how, if you're teaching a deadlift, you're just going to teach them how to hinge first. And then like you're just giving them pieces to the puzzle. And then you're going to eventually, okay, now you're going to pull a bar from the ground, but you're going to do all these same things that we've been working on. And so I think it's easy in the weight room just because things are a little more controlled. And then when you get out onto the field, you start to add like, you can add some more uncontrolled variables, and it's a little harder to coach. But I think you need to take the same approach to speed training, principle of progressive overload. Like, if you're not like progressing the skill of the movement, if you're not progressing the load of the movement, you're not going to get the same kind of adaptation of the stress. Like, you're just doing it to do it. And we know it works in strength training. We know it works in speed training, but we haven't like grown to like really adapt that into speed training as much as I think, not only in baseball, but just in anything, any strength and conditioning.
Yeah, so much good stuff. And I think it goes back to when we were talking about CrossFit is kind of the coaching creates the value. Like you said, some of the drills, some coaches have called them useless, or even exercises are useless, but I think it's more, like you said, how you coach it and how it fits into the big picture. So right on there. Do you have any go-to cues when you're teaching speed, either to young guys or guys who are more advanced? Let's say acceleration specific. Do you have certain cues that you're kind of coaching on, or is it just hey, this is what I see, this is how you adjust individually?
Well, I think there's definitely some that you can harp on for everybody. The number one is we want to create stiffness, and we're trying to, like, we always point to like the beams that hold up the gym. We're like, all right, little guy, like, what would happen if that beam just collapsed? I'm like, well, obviously the whole building would fall down. And we're like, yeah, you're right. Like, we need that beam to be stiff to handle the load of the rest of the building. And that's kind of how we teach like acceleration. Like, we want your spine to be incredibly stiff so that you can, like, we know you're strong. Like, we get a bunch of high school football kids that are freaking strong, but they have no idea how to like create stiffness and transfer all the force that they know how to produce. And so we try to help them learn how to dissociate their trunk stiffness from their lower body. Like, you'll see a lot of people as they're driving their knees up and their toe up, and then they're pushing behind them, extending them, their pelvis is just dumping forward, backward, and they have no concept of like creating stiffness and then creating force around that. So we cues like the beam, planks. Like, that's the thing. Like, we have to cue that in not just sprinting, but like we have to cue that in all sorts of other drills, so that when it comes to when they actually get on the field and sprint, they don't necessarily have to think about it as much. They just do what they've been doing with every other exercise. And then the second one I would say would just be the concept of like, you might have saw it on Twitter like last week, but just like creating length and like being patient. Like, I think when people are accelerating, it's a very common tendency to just like think fast. And so it's just choppy, and they're really not gaining any ground with every step. They're just turning over really, really quick. But if you go look at like the best sprinters in the world, like, they're patient. Like, they get fully extended, and then there's almost like a pause. Like, they're almost in the air, frozen, but they're still going forward, gaining ground. And their very next thing is like they're trying to get from backside to front side as quickly and efficiently as possible. And there's really no turnover. It's just like extension, boom, right into knee drive. And you really don't get like that lower body, like that heel kicking up to the hamstring and that cycle action that you see in more top end speed. But it's just like a punch. And then they start to cycle through. Whereas like we see a lot just their legs just start churning really, really quickly. They have the frequency down, but they don't have the length. And so we try to get them to think about being patient, almost jumping, but not vertically. We want them to go horizontally, and just being patient and not letting that heel kick up too far back. And it's hard. Not every athlete gets it right away, but we can use things like video. We can use, sometimes I have to go out there and run the sprint so that they can. I'm like, all right, I want you to look at this, this, and this, and then I'll do it. There's different ways, depending on the athlete, that we have to attack it. But those are probably the two biggest things that I coach the most when it comes to acceleration.
Awesome. Really good stuff. So I think this is probably the appropriate time to ask this, and it might go along with what we were talking about. But what do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing? Is it related to speed, or is it something totally out in left field?
I don't know. I was kind of thinking along the lines of because we work with baseball players. Baseball players are incredibly asymmetrical, but we have programs and things out there that are basically designed around chasing symmetry, and there are people that swear by that. We have to if we have these asymmetries, we're increasing our risk for injury, and so we need to become more symmetrical. And I think there are definitely people that won't think I'm crazy for thinking that, but I know there are some people that would disagree. But I just look at baseball being such an asymmetrical sport, so dominant on a one-sided, whether it's rotational or even just running around the base. You're still sprinting, but you're turning left. That's all you do, pretty much. Or if you play third base, you're going to make more plays to your left than you are to your right. It's just so asymmetrical. So the idea that we need to be symmetrical just doesn't really make sense to me. And especially just considering you have some pitchers, let's use pitchers as an example, that they have these crazy asymmetries, but that's, who's to say that that's not why they throw hard, or, why they can get crazy hip to shoulder separation before they get ball release. By chasing symmetry, you don't know, you might actually be putting them at a better risk of getting injured. You might be taking away what is actually making them as successful as they are. So I think if anything, let's at least just not make snap bold statements like that, but let's at least look at it on a case-to-case basis, if anything.
You threw me a big curveball there. I thought for sure you were going to go the speed training route. But I did see something the other day. I don't know if it was somewhere on social media or something I was reading, but it was the exact same thing you just said, that chasing symmetry might actually increase the risk of injury, and that the asymmetries might make them unique in their sport. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because like I said, I just saw it. Mm-hmm. So what do you believe makes a strength and conditioning coach, quote unquote, successful?
I would say for me, I become a successful strength coach when I don't have to be a motivator for them. I don't have to provide any sort of extrinsic motivation. And the argument against that would be there are just some players that are never going to be intrinsically motivated, and they're going to be motivated by social status, money, whatever, all that stuff. I think that's true, but I still think as a coach, you need to be pursuing that with every athlete you come across. I think you can do that in ways just helping them to build habits, build, a sustainable habit where they can just get into every day. It might be different than other people, but at least they're figuring out for themselves what they need to do, to where they at the end of the day, they might not need you. If you can build them up to where they don't necessarily need you anymore, I think you're doing a good job. That comes from like habits. That comes from just like getting them to understand the process of like what they're doing, like why are they training. I think that just comes down to like being able to communicate. I think every coach needs to read Conscious Coaching by Brett Bartholomew. I think he does a great job of like breaking down what effective communication really looks like and what the benefits of that really are. And I think he does a good job of like, in a very, very like, you can tell he's a great guy, like a nice way of saying like we need to be better at like analyzing ourselves as coaches. And are we good communicators? Like, are we serving our athletes and doing what we can? And I think a successful strength coach seeks that out. Like they seek out personal growth in a selfless way, so that like if I grow, that's only going to increase my ability to like help my athletes grow, and get them to the point where like they don't have to rely on me to provide them everything, and they understand the process, they understand the habits, they understand the work that needs to be done, and then they're going to give their best possible effort on everything.
For me, it's so rewarding when I just keep hounding a guy over and over and over and over to do the same thing, and then finally it clicks for him and he just does it without me telling him. And sometimes it's literally them saying, I did it just so you wouldn't bother me. And like for me, that's a win, right? But it's like, I need you to come in and do this every day. And every day I got to tell them, did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? And then finally they come in and they're like, see, I'm here. You don't have to ask me. And it's like, that's all I want. And then after a week, they're just doing it on their own. And they're like, wow, this is actually helping me feel better. It's like, I've been trying to tell you that. You've been stubborn the whole time, but at least you get through to them. So I'm right on board with you there. And I just ordered the book, so I'll keep you in the loop about what I think about it. I've heard nothing but good things, so it's supposed to come in the next couple of days, and when it does, I'm going to get cracking on it. So I'll keep you in the loop on that one.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for others in the field, either going off of your private setting experience or just your first year in baseball, maybe guys that are looking to get into coach in baseball? What advice do you have? You can pick either side or both sides.
I'll go ahead and just pick a general answer.
Okay, that works for me too, yeah.
I think the biggest thing is like, in order to truly grow, like you have to constantly be questioning what you're doing. You have to be able to look at what other people are doing, other programs, and you have to be able to, like, you can't just like say, oh, that's good or that's bad. Like, because you can take something positive from everything, even CrossFit. Like, you just like having that like growth mindset of I can take something from everything, and then like actively seeking that out, and then challenging what you're doing. Like, why are we doing like thoracic rotations? Is there a better way we can create sustainable thoracic rotation mobility than what we're doing? There might be. So maybe we need to like look at what we're doing and start to think about ideas on ways we can do it better, or do we even need to do it? Like, I think if we're just constantly like questioning ourselves and like challenging ourselves, like I don't think it needs to be like a lack of confidence type situation. But I think it's just having the mindset of like constantly wanting to learn and grow and challenge and not being afraid to change what you're doing. It's one of the reasons why I do enjoy working at Godspeed, because our founder, Lance, grew up as a weightlifter, like Olympic weightlifting. Every athlete that came through Godspeed back 8 years ago did snatches, cleans, jerks, like clustered, like all sorts of like Olympic weightlifting programming styles. And now like we hardly do any of that stuff with athletes. Like we do it with select few, but like we've changed, like the program's changed. I think constantly evolving and not being afraid to just like, there are definitely some names in this industry that are like the best, and like they've proven that they are intelligent and that they are good. But like challenge them. Like don't just do what they do because they're smart. Like look at what they do and then challenge it, and then try it yourself and see if you can do it better or think of a better way to do it. And I think you just have to constantly be working with that mindset.
I think the ones that have gotten to that position that you say are the best are probably following that advice, where they're always questioning, they're always trying to grow and learn and challenge themselves. So that's really good advice. Along those lines, you talk about a growth mindset, and you talked about Coach Bartholomew's book. Where are you going for continuing it? Are you reading books? Are you listening to podcasts? Any seminars you're attending? Where are you going?
I'm definitely more of a reader. Like I enjoy reading. Conscious Coaching is a must read. I'm reading a couple books right now. Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. That's been awesome. Definitely recommend that from like a leadership perspective. As in terms of podcasts, I used to be huge on podcasts. Now I just I still listen to them, but not near as much as I used to. But definitely this podcast, like if guys are only popping in every once in a while, like I definitely recommend they pop in every time. The Altus podcast has some good stuff because it's just a little bit different. A kind of a new one that I've been listening to a little bit is the Art of Pitching podcast, and they've got some good guys in the baseball industry on there that are, again, they kind of have that like challenge the status quo mindset, which I appreciate. So some of the stuff might be out there a little bit, but again, you can take it and you can take something from it. In terms of conferences, I think the one I've gone to this conference the last 2 winters is the Pitchapalooza conference in Nashville, put on by Lance Wheeler. It was really, really good the first time, and it was even better the second time I went, and definitely going to go next year no matter where I end up in the off season. Ton of just super smart, passionate baseball people there. I think there are something like 22 major league organizations there this year. And a lot of them, I mean, if we're talking like general managers, like some organizations brought their whole front office to hear what all these super smart guys had to say. So Pitchapalooza is a must attend for me. I attended a functional range conditioning seminar this off season, which I think was good. Again, it's kind of it's something different, something a little challenging to the typical mobility thought that is out there right now. So I think the biggest thing when it comes to resources, like just not reading and choosing like what you already agree with, but like going out and finding stuff that before you read this book that you might not agree, but go ahead and read it anyway, because you might get some different ideas.
I love that thought right there. If you just always read what you like and what you agree with, you're not actually learning anything or growing. You're just sticking with the same stuff So that's a good way to end that one. If you got time, I'd like to do a lightning round with you. What are your thoughts on that?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. So 4 questions. First question, who is your biggest influence in the strength and conditioning field?
Biggest influence. I would say that if I had to say the biggest, it would probably be Eric Cressy, just because when I was in college, I somehow stumbled upon his website, and it was really the first like baseball strength and conditioning resource that I really was exposed to. And so just because I was in college and I was eager to learn, like I read every word he wrote, I feel like. And I kind of just I would say that jump started my passion of and then I started finding other guys and started just soaking up as much as I could. But it really started, I mean, thankful that he puts out so much stuff because I was able to find him, and like that kind of jump started everything. There's a lot of big influencers, but like I would have to say he's the biggest just because like he was the first.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. One piece of equipment to train with, what would you choose?
I feel like as a strength coach, like you have to say barbell. Like there's not another answer. It's barbell.
Yeah, I'm barbell to the point that like I even do my soft tissue stuff with barbell. So if I literally have a barbell and plates, I'm rolling.
Yeah, it's the best.
Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
Let's go professionally. I don't know, that one is tough. And I knew you were gonna ask me that, and it's still like it's still hard to prepare because I could go a lot of different ways with that, but I would say one of the biggest accomplishments I had. We'll say it was the biggest. One of the players I worked with in Burlington this year. He was a 20-year-old pitcher from Venezuela. Complete goofball, like goofiest kid I've ever met in my whole life. But just a really, really good kid. Didn't speak any English at all. But man, like so much fun to be around, and wasn't a hard worker at all. But like, I learned how to work with him, and I built that relationship with him. And I know enough Spanish to where like I can communicate and I can get that relationship going. But sometimes you work on building relationships with players and athletes, and you don't really get to see the fruit from it. And especially in baseball, because you have guys moving up and down levels all the time. And like I remember the first time it really hit me that it's so cutthroat was in spring training. I had this like really good talk with this guy about like lifting and all this stuff for like 20 minutes in the weight room one day. And then he got cut the next day. And I was like, I'm never going to see that guy again. And like, it hit me. It's hard to build relationships, and you never really see, or not never, but like it's hard to see sometimes like the fruit of your efforts. But our last series in Burlington this year was actually in Bristol. It was a road series, and so on our drive back home, this kid was sitting in the seat behind me, and he typed into his Google Translator like this big long thing, and then he just tapped me on the shoulder and showed me his phone. And so I read it in like the broken English translation, and it was just him like thanking me for my patience with him and for working with him and like for caring for him and trying to make him a better player. And like that was really special to me, because it was like I wasn't doing it for that reaction, but like the fact that like it was recognized is always going to be good. Like it's always encouraging as a coach when you have your efforts recognized, especially when it comes to like the relationships you're trying to build, because coaching is all about relationships. And so that was pretty cool. Probably one
that's awesome, man. That's what it's all about. And like you said, sometimes you don't get to see the fruits of your labor, and sometimes you do years later. I had a couple guys that I had in Bristol that when I was in Portland this year, they were in Altoona, and I hadn't seen them since then. And they came up to me, and it was like, man, we miss you so much. It's so good to see you. Like, how you been? And it's like, I got to see these kids when they were in rookie ball, and now they're a couple steps from the big leagues, and it really hit like how much impact we can have, even if we don't get to see it. So I'm right there with you. Last one, any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose?
Any career? I knew you were going to ask me this, and the only thing I could think of, I don't even know if it's a career or if it's like a job, but like I think it'd be so cool to work for like GoPro, and like your job is just like make sick videos. Like that's all you do. You just go like to sick places and just make sick videos, and like go mountain biking, kayaking, and like do this just insane stuff, and you just like make videos. You probably just can't do that, but
When you see videos like that pop up, you're like, wow, that's such a cool life that they're living. Like, how do I get to do that?
That would be me. But I'll stick to strength and conditioning.
That's kind of the resounding answer. Everybody doesn't know; they'd just rather be a strength coach. So, it's been awesome, man. A lot of good stuff on this one. If the listeners want to get in touch with you, where can we get more from you? Strictly Twitter, or can we go somewhere else to get more?
I would say Twitter is the best place. That's kind of where I do most of my talking shop. Twitter handle is just Womack Strength. You can follow me on Instagram. I post more just random stuff on there, so you don't worry about that. I do have a website and a blog that I update once every 3 months. So there's just some stuff on there if you want to go to austinwomack.com. But I would say Twitter is the best way. We can communicate as strength coaches, bounce ideas off each other, and just talk about what we all love and what we're all passionate about.
Perfect, man. I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you taking time out of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it, Chris. Take care.
Thanks, man. All right, everybody. That concludes this week's episode with Austin. I hope you enjoyed this one. He had a ton of good information on speed training, and I think it builds really well off of the last episode with Adam. 3 things that I took from Austin. Number 1, look at speed training the same way you do as strength training. Number 2, seek personal growth in a selfless way. And number 3, don't be afraid to challenge yourself or change your thoughts. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.